Women are directly adapted to act as the nurses and educators of our early childhood, for the simple reason that they themselves are childish, foolish, and short-sighted. In a word, are big children all their lives. Harsh words from one of history's most influential philosophers. But was Arthur Schopenhauer truly a misogynist, or is there more to this controversial story? Today, we're diving into the mind of the man who wrote some of the most scathing critiques of women in philosophical history. What if I told you that behind these brutal words lies a complex story of personal trauma, Victorian-era social dynamics, and a philosopher whose views may have evolved over time? The answer might surprise you. Schopenhauer's writings on women have sparked outrage for generations. Yet they also raise profound questions about how personal experiences shape our worldviews, and how even brilliant minds can be blinded by their own suffering. When we look at Schopenhauer's essay on women, we encounter statements that would make modern readers recoil. He called women the unesthetic sex, claimed they lacked reasoning powers, and insisted they were intended neither for great mental nor physical works. He even went so far as to claim women possessed an ineradicable tendency to tell lies. But to understand these views, we must first understand the man behind them. Schopenhauer's early life was marked by tragedy and emotional turmoil. His father committed suicide when Arthur was just a teenager, a devastating event that left him with deep psychological wounds. His relationship with his mother was famously dysfunctional, described by biographers as cold and antagonistic. Throughout his life, he struggled in his romantic pursuits, facing rejection and disappointment. Could these personal failures have colored his philosophical perspective on women? Absolutely, but that's only part of the story. We must also consider the historical context. Schopenhauer was writing in 19th century Germany, where women's roles were strictly defined and limited. His primary exposure was to upper-class Victorian women, a demographic he specifically targets in many of his critiques. When he rails against ladies with their pretensions and arrogance, he's addressing a specific social class whose behaviors he found artificial and contrived. Yet despite these harsh critiques, Schopenhauer wasn't entirely dismissive of women's value. He wrote that without women, our lives would be deprived of help in the beginning, of joy in the middle, and of consolation in the end. He acknowledged women's capacity for compassion, noting they show more sympathy for the unfortunate than men. Even more interesting is how his views evolved over time. Near the end of his life, while posing for sculptress Elizabeth Ney, Schopenhauer remarked, "I have not yet spoken my last word about women. I believe that if a woman succeeds in withdrawing from the mass, or rather raising herself above mass, she grows ceaselessly in more than a man." This suggests a softening of his earlier rigid stance, an acknowledgement that his sweeping generalizations might have exceptions, and that individual women could transcend the limitations he had previously ascribed to their entire sex. So, what are we to make of Schopenhauer's views on women? Were they simply the bitter musings of a man who failed in his relationships with the opposite sex? Were they a product of his time? Or did they contain kernels of insight buried beneath layers of prejudice? The tension between Schopenhauer's undeniable philosophical genius and his deeply problematic views on women creates a fascinating contradiction. How could someone capable of such profound insights into human suffering and the nature of reality be so blind to his own biases? Perhaps the answer lies in Schopenhauer's own philosophy. He famously argued that our experiences of the world are shaped by our individual perspectives, that we can never truly see reality as it is, only as it appears to us through the lens of our own consciousness. By this logic, Schopenhauer's view of women was inevitably colored by his own experiences, his troubled relationship with his mother, his romantic failures, the social conventions of his time. His perspective wasn't objective truth, but a reflection of his personal suffering projected onto an entire gender. This doesn't excuse his misogyny, but it does help us understand it. And in understanding it, we gain insight not just into Schopenhauer, but into how prejudice works in general, how even brilliant minds can be trapped within the limitations of their own experiences. So did Schopenhauer hate women? The evidence suggests his relationship with the opposite sex was far more complex than simple hatred. His views were shaped by personal trauma, social context, and his own philosophical framework. And importantly, they weren't static. They evolved throughout his life. What's certain is that Schopenhauer's writings on women reveal as much about him as they do about his subject. They show us a brilliant but deeply flawed thinker grappling with his own personal demons. They remind us that no philosopher, no matter how insightful, is immune to the biases of their time and experience. The most valuable lesson we can learn from Schopenhauer's misogyny might be about the dangers of universalizing from personal experience, of mistaking our subjective perspective for objective reality. It's a mistake that even one of history's greatest philosophers wasn't immune to making. If you found this exploration of Schopenhauer's complex legacy intriguing, hit that like button and subscribe for more philosophical deep dives. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think we should separate a philosopher's ideas from their personal flaws, or are they inextricably linked? Let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.